The BRICS countries themselves have felt that they simply have not had the representation that they would have liked in the IMF and the World Bank. It's time for them to assert themselves.
We're not a commercial bank. And a commercial bank's interest, of course, would be to make profit.
We don't face the same risks that commercial banks face, who, for example, are impacted upon by the uncertainty in the financial world as a result of the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank.
The world is changing. Over the last couple decades, emerging and developing markets around the world, led by Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, have started a movement to provide an alternative to Western ideology, economic opportunity, and now financial systems through a new, legitimate bank to challenge the traditional global order. In this video, let's talk about the BRICS Bank, how it plans to challenge the global commercial banking structure in places like the United States and Europe, and how a successful BRICS Bank could end up challenging the US dollar. First, let's quickly talk about how the global banking system works and why this context is so important to understand what's happening today with the BRICS Bank and their plans going forward. The most important piece of the global banking system is a technology called SWIFT. SWIFT stands for Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication. It was first created 50 years ago, is headquartered in Belgium, and is controlled by the G10 central banks plus the European Union Central Bank. Trillions of dollars are sent cross borders every single day. SWIFT is how banks communicate securely and quickly with each other, and each bank has their own unique SWIFT ID. So say you want to transfer money to a friend who lives in another country. You simply add their bank's SWIFT ID to the transaction, and as long as those two banks have an account with each other, they would authenticate the payment request and your friend receives the money. If the banks don't have a relationship, the SWIFT message will be sent through intermediary banks until the payment request is verified. Because many institutions do not have accounts with one another, they rely on intermediaries, and these intermediaries usually have a presence in, you guessed it, the United States because of the current strength of the dollar worldwide. This means that the United States is able to police these transactions and has some control over who can use the system or not. Currently, there are over 11,000 banking institutions in over 200 countries and territories around the world that use SWIFT. However, because of the invasion of Ukraine, the SWIFT governing body decided to remove most of the top Russian banks, which was supposed to make it harder to continue trading with the rest of the world. But Russia has been prepared for a moment like this, as they created their own SWIFT alternative in 2014 called SPFS, or the System for Transfer of Financial Messages. And in total, over 400 institutions from Russia and other countries have joined their alternative. But Russia's not the only country with a SWIFT alternative. In 2015, China formed the Cross-Border Interbank Payment System and has grown to over 1,300 financial institutions worldwide. The Reserve Bank of India is looking to take its domestic financial messaging system global as well. If these three countries eventually get to the point where their domestic SWIFT alternatives can connect seamlessly with each other, creating a larger global network and inviting the rest of BRICS and BRICS friends to join, a larger secondary economy will start to take shape outside of the peripheral of the Western world. Something else you're going to need when starting a secondary global economy is a bank, and the BRICS Bank is a lot more legit than most people realize. In 2014, the BRICS countries founded the New Development Bank, which described itself as a multilateral development bank established to finance infrastructure and sustainable development projects in emerging markets and developing countries. With this financial institution, BRICS is laying down the framework to build up every corner of the world and then use those emerging economies to partner up with and challenge countries like the United States and, of course, the dollar. The New Development Bank is seen as an effort to rival the Bretton Woods system created in the 1940s, giving the dollar world reserve currency status with its pillars in the World Bank and International Monetary Fund. They have a plan to invest $32.8 billion of 96 approved projects around the world that include things like clean energy, transportation infrastructure, and basic sanitation. Like traditional banks, New Development Bank has set up maturity bonds for investors to help fund their projects, and they get their quarterly financial statements audited by Deloitte, one of the big four accounting firms in the world. Also, just like individuals, countries, companies, and banks all have credit ratings based on how likely and how safe that entity's ability is to pay off its loans. The debt is measured on a scale from AAA to D, and two of the larger credit rating companies are Fitch and Standard & Poor's. For the New Development Bank, Fitch has given them a AA rating, and Standard & Poor's rating comes in at AA+. For context, these two credit rating companies have given the United States government ratings of AAA and AA+, and they gave the largest bank in the US, JP Morgan Chase, ratings of AA- and A+, respectively. Maybe more important is the bank's leadership. Dilma Rousseff was recently named the chief of the New Development Bank, and she's just not some person. She used to be the president of Brazil. Yeah, the country. That would be like if Joe Biden or Donald Trump became CEOs of JP Morgan Chase or Bank of America after they left office. However, while the New Development Bank currently runs as a non-profit organization, there are many challenges ahead for the bank to fund its existing projects, including an increasingly complex geopolitical environment. Aside from the increasing rivalry between China and India, potentially straining relations between the BRICS members, the bank is also grappling with the fallout and economic repercussions from the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Since March 2022, Russia had all its new transactions within the bank frozen, which accounted for a total exposure of $1.8 billion of Russian domestic entities. As the New Development Bank relies on external financing and capital from the bank's members, like Russia, the ongoing conflict combined with external pressure from the West and sanctions on Russia have hindered the bank's quest for foreign funds. To address these financial issues, the bank is looking to add more members to help with financing. Currently, there are 9 country members of the bank, the 5 founding BRICS countries, as well as Bangladesh, the UAE, Egypt, and Uruguay. At the bank's most recent member meeting, Rousseff announced it will widen its membership as it seeks to boost its capital and counter the influence of the Western-dominated multilateral banks. The bank will look at increasing the diversity of its members for things like geography, development stages, and the size of the country. Rousseff also added, "As a former president of a developing country, I know how important multilateral banks are, and how much of a challenge it is to obtain finance or to raise funds on the scale needed to address social and economic challenges in our countries." A clear marketing tactic from the New Development Bank to get its message out to the rest of the emerging markets around the world. If you scratch our backs by investing in the bank, increasing our portfolio, we'll scratch your back by making significant financial investments into your country, hopefully leveling up your economy. But how specifically can the New Development Bank challenge the US dollar? Well, first, if you like these videos on the impact that global economies and emerging markets have on the US economy and the dollar, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's talk about the bank's goals. They want to finance more projects in local currencies in order to strengthen those domestic markets and protect its borrowers from the risk of currency fluctuation. This is important because countries around the world, specifically emerging and developing countries, are dealing with tremendous levels of inflation, meaning their currency could be more susceptible to volatile movements in value. The bank wants to have 30% of their funding in local currencies, excluding the dollar, by 2026, and bank members have recently said they're at 22% for these type of transactions and on track to hit their target. When talking about the world's current battle for currency supremacy, Rousseff said, "The world is going through a transformation process, and it's not about one currency against any other one." New Development Bank will continue seeking funds in the dollar market, but also in the Asian market. In my opinion, the messaging here is very clear. They're going to do what they think is best for the New Development Bank and their member countries right now, even if that means using the dollar to get there, but with their eye on the future of eliminating the dollar for good. However, they may have taken their ambitious goal a little too far, because it was recently reported that the bank is now struggling to find US dollars. Kind of ironic, don't you think? Uncovered by a Wall Street Journal report, the bank specifically needs funds in US dollars to repay its debt. Russia's invasion of Ukraine saw several countries stop taking loans from the bank. Right after Russia engaged war against Ukraine in 2022, the bank immediately froze lending to Russia. The New Development Bank had to comply with Western sanctions as no country stepped forward to do business with the BRICS Bank. Basically, the bank was stuck between a rock and a hard place. But have no fear, they turned to someone who happened to have a lot of dollars: Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia seems to have endless dollars, as the majority of the world still buys oil from them in dollars. It seems to make too much sense for the sides to link up, as it would benefit both. The New Development Bank seems strapped for dollars, and Saudi Arabia would give them the financial muscle to move forward more aggressively. While it would make sense for Saudi Arabia to join New Development Bank, would it make sense for Saudi Arabia to join BRICS? I go through the top 50 countries based on GDP and find the most likely country to join BRICS. Is it Saudi Arabia? Find out in this video here.